We're at a turning point in politics. People have had enough and they want change. In the last 8 years, we've had 4 prime ministers.
There should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new prime minister.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
And to be elected as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party.
One didn't even last longer than a lettuce. And now we've got Rishi Sunak, whose net worth just went up to £651 million. The world is dying from climate change and no one seems to be doing anything about it. And as young people, we have a chance to change this, but not enough people are voting. In the last general election, only 47% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted, which is just too low. I want to find out why there aren't enough young people voting. So I've always cared about politics. I remember when I was 8 years old, touring around the House of Parliament and I was convinced I was going to be Prime Minister. I've always stayed up to date with the news and all over my social media there's political content. But a lot of my friends aren't like that. There's obviously a lot of talk about a potential general election soon and I don't think most of them can even name the 4 main political parties. I think if you have the right to vote and you don't, you have no complaining rights. You can't complain that your uni tuition is too expensive, that you can't afford a house, you can't afford food. You don't have a right to complain about all that if you don't vote and you have the right to vote. We're so lucky to live in a democratic country where we can actually vote for who we want to run the country. I honestly think it's quite ignorant and selfish not to use that right, especially if you're a woman, because we've only had the right to vote for a bit over 100 years now, and the suffragettes and the suffragists literally risked their lives for us to be able to vote. So to not use that just feels like a slap in the face to all those women out there. Not even 50% of 18 to 24-year-olds in the last general election voted, which is terrifyingly low. So I just want to find out why that number is so low. I'm speaking with some A-level politics students to find out what they think. What do you think Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer are going to need to do to get young people voting?
Not be the candidates.
Oh.
Realistically, neither of them are suitable.
Why do you think that?
When have they done anything for young people apart from try and make us do more maths and English? I can tell you now I'd fail maths and English if I do it anymore.
So do you feel like Rishi Sunak and the Tories have done anything for young people in the last 14 years?
They're only about the old people. What they've done is increase pension rates. The problem is they never appeal to young people. They never look on their side of life because they never it makes no incentive for you to vote for them.
So what do you think would get more young people voting for them? Do you think a change of policy is something that's really important?
Not even a change of policy, just appealing to their nature.
I think that they should increase the policies that they put on young people, such as making universities cheaper, because that will encourage people to vote for them.
I think Rishi Sunak is only making things worse. He's already trying to get rid of creative subjects at uni. He's trying to get rid of things like drama and arts and graphic design, which just isn't good because we need people to make films, we need people to make art. Everything, we can't just have a world of scientists, it doesn't work like that. So I think if Keir Starmer really wants people to vote, he's going to have to say, we're going to have to focus on all subjects. We're not just going to get rid of all the creative subjects and only do maths and English and science. And obviously Rishi Sunak's thinking about doing maths and English at A-level for everyone. That's not really in everyone's interest, is it?
Do you think there's enough education on politics in school?
I don't think there is at all. You go to America and everyone knows their rights, but if you come here, I'd say it's a minority. I'd say under 10% of people probably know everything they could, the bare minimum they should know about politics. They really don't know enough. So if we were to implement a subject that everyone kind of got to learn a bit about, it should be politics. Like we do in secondary school, you do PSHE and you cover bits of politics, but you need to do more on that. I think maths and English. Rishi Sunak trying to get them to A level, it's all good, well and good, but I mean politics is more important.
So do you think politicians are putting themselves on social media enough? Do you think if they advertise better on there, more young people would know about them?
Because we laugh at what they post. I'll be honest, quite a lot of what they post can be really cringy and really that you can tell they're boomers and they don't know what they're doing on it.
But it can sometimes benefit them because it draws attention to them, and then you learn more about the person. So it does draw more attention to them because it means young people do see them more, but at the same time, it's more so what they're doing rather than how they're doing it, which is the problem.
So did you guys grow up talking a lot about politics at home?
For me,
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
Do you think parents not talking much about politics at home is why a lot of kids just don't get involved in it?
I would say the problem is sometimes it's often the parents who don't know what they're on about, so then they aren't able to have those conversations with kids. So as Hamish was saying, like, if politics was made into a subject you're meant to do, like in GCSE you do a broad range of subjects before picking your subjects. If politics was one of them, then I feel people would develop a much greater understanding of what it is, which can also benefit in the voting patterns.
It's definitely also a controversial topic in some households. People don't want to express certain views in fear of what their view could be wrong or cancelled.
Do you feel like talking about being cancelled and stuff, do you think cancel culture is also like stopping young people from wanting to know more about politics because they're scared of sort of like not being seen as woke or things like that?
Definitely. Because you're scared of your views in these days. Because you say one thing wrong, everyone's against you.
Do you think more young people are like starting to get involved in politics? And
The problem is no, because graphs show it's getting worse.
Politics has definitely become more popular in colleges. They're becoming, the courses are nearly full.
I'm now on my way to speak to some Liberal Democrat representatives to see what they're doing for young people. But congrats, the recent council elections, Liberals did pretty well, didn't
We did, we did. We gained an extra seat. I got elected, which is the best news.
Congrats.
Thank you. So we'll continue to run the council for the next 2 years. And our attention is now shifting to the general election campaign.
So do you think young people are a group that the Lib Dems are going to want to win over to get a lot of success in the next election?
Absolutely. I don't think we should focus on any one group more than any other. Everyone's vote is important. Everyone's needs are important. I think young people, and the data shows us that young people are more inclined to vote Labour or Liberal Democrat than Conservative. But importantly, also give them good reasons to vote, because as I'm sure you're aware, turnout of voters varies considerably across the age groups.
Do you think the Lib Dems appeal to the needs of younger people?
I think the principles and the values with which we operate do. Our founding principles are very much about equality and focusing on education as well, because it is through education that people have the opportunity to make most of their lives. And whilst I can't class myself as a young person now, I was once. And in talking to younger members of our community, I do believe they're values that the young share.
So why do you think young people aren't as engaged in politics? What do you think could be done to get more young people involved?
Young people have busy lives. Whilst I say I'm not young myself, I've got a 29 and 27-year-old children, so I see how busy their lives are. I think tend to be less involved in the local community. And often I think local politicians in particular, but also MPs to an extent, are seen as sort of community figures, and young people's community is wider and more varied and faster moving than perhaps elected representatives.
Do you think the Liberal Democrats are doing enough to get their message out to young people?
We have an active young Liberals organisation, who hold our feet to the fire as a party in terms of the policies we develop and the messages we send out. I think we try to do as much as possible online, because I think that's how most, sorry, terrible generalisation, but I think that's younger people tend to consume news online rather than through traditional channels.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so we try to do as much as possible online. We do make a point of targeting letters to young voters when they come onto the register, typically below the age of 30, below the age of 25. Make sure that we are making extra effort to communicate with those people.
If there were more young people voting, do you think it would like benefit more parties over the others, or do you think all parties could benefit from having more young voters?
I think the country would benefit.
Recent council elections, what were your roles in that?
Yeah, so basically the key role that I had was making sure that the campaign runs as smoothly as possible, and essentially is making sure that every day we're essentially making progress. So we're speaking to more people, we're finding more voters, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess it paid off though, so you must be feeling quite great about that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. It went well, and we're really pleased with how things are going. We have some really hard-working councillors, and we had some brilliant candidates this year, so we're really happy with how it went. And heading towards the general election, this year at some point. So I think it's important now. Like, we need to take a breather, but then also get going again, and like remember that we want to get Clive into Westminster. So yeah.
So is there anything that you either did in the local elections or are going to do in the general elections that kind of focuses on younger people, or is the campaign kind of just like widespread about targeting everyone?
So I'd say that we do try and target everyone, but within that there are different things that will help us appeal to younger people. I guess with younger people, one thing that, as someone who'd like to think of themselves as a younger person, I think one of the main things is a lot of young people feel let down. They feel a little bit let down by the government. After COVID, that wasn't handled very well. And we've got a situation where younger people find themselves a bit apathetic towards politics, which can be a real problem. People don't feel like they connect to MPs, to the Prime Minister, to people who are supposed to represent them. So what we're trying to do really is reach out to those people and say there is an alternative in Woking amidst the Liberal Democrats. I guess within that, the main things would be, focus on mental health. The impact of COVID on young people's mental health is really important.
So I'm 17 and I will just miss the cut-off for this year's election to be able to vote. And when I've been doing this project, I've been, talking to a lot of my friends, and like they'll have a general idea of the Conservatives and Labour, but most of them don't know like anything about the Liberal Democrats. And I know a lot of people my age are going on social media a lot, and that's where we get most of our news from. So I just wondered how much of the upcoming campaign do you want to focus on social media to kind of spread it out to younger audiences?
Yeah, so social media is definitely something we really want to make sure that we're not taking our eye off the ball with, essentially. It's a really key way of reaching younger people. We're well aware that as much as we do things such as door knocking and delivering leaflets, more like traditional methods of campaigning, as much as we do that, we can't always reach people. We can't reach younger people, like you say. So a key part of our message is to project our message basically online, make sure that Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all these things are being used to reach as many people as possible. It's not always easy, but it's something that we're really focused on.
Yeah, because I know that TikTok is all of my friends are on there, but it's really difficult because it's such an algorithm specific platform. Like, I'm into politics, I'm like, I'm doing a documentary about it, but a lot of my friends aren't. So I can imagine it's quite difficult to make sure that you're targeting the people who aren't necessarily looking for the content at the same time.
Exactly, yeah, and these different platforms have different algorithms, and it's kind of the challenge for us really is to make sure that we're reaching people on each one. And like you say, TikTok is like very specific, and you have to really reach a certain type of person and kind of make sure that each TikTok video is kind of getting momentum, that sort of thing. So it's definitely difficult, and it's definitely like new, it's like a new challenge really, because we obviously didn't have this sort of 10, 20 years ago. This is like quite a new thing. So making sure that we approach it the right way and kind of learn all the time about how these things works is important. Because there's, as I said earlier, like there's a generation of people I think who are quite apathetic. You say yourself that you're interested in politics, but a lot of people your age and my age aren't, because I think we have to look at the reasons why as well,
Yeah, for sure.
rather than just saying that they're not interested in politics because they're young. I think that's probably a bit of a kind of sweeping statement, you know, that some people are ringing out and just saying that young people don't want to vote, you know, when they first get to the age where they can vote and that sort of thing. We need to look at why, and I think that's a key part of what we're trying to do.
Now, one thing I really wanted for this project was to give a balanced view, so I wanted one representative at least from each of the four main political parties: the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party. The Liberal Democrats replied really fast and they were really keen to get involved, so as you saw, an interview was set up. I've recently been getting involved with Labour events and making connections there, so getting a representative from the Labour Party was no issue either. However, where we did get an issue was getting someone from the Green Party or the Conservative Party. Now, as the Green Party only have one MP and she was too busy, I thought it was best to reach out to the Youth Green Wing. Now, they were replying and making contact with me, however, we didn't end up getting a date for an interview set because they all had to vote on it and get a majority to do the interview. Now, if they have to vote on something as small as a student documentary project, it does make you wonder if they do get anything done, and maybe that's why they do only have one MP. Now, for the past 2 months, I've been trying to arrange contacts here, and I've been emailing all my local Conservative MPs, my local Conservative councillors, but I was getting no replies. Now, due to the May 2nd elections, a lot of the councillors locally to me did lose their seats, so I wasn't surprised not to hear back from any of those Tory councillors. Funnily enough though, the one reply I did get was from Theresa May's assistant, which I found quite funny as you'd assume she would be the least likely to reply. Unfortunately though, she was too busy. Then I finally found someone who replied. She's my local MP candidate for the Conservative Party, and we had a date set up and everything, and then...
The general election will be held on the 4th of July.
Diaries had been cleared, interviews and ministerial trips cancelled.
Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future.
Am I happy a general election has just been called? Yes, of course. That means we can finally get the Tories out of Downing Street. Am I happy they chose to do it on the week I was interviewing people? Not really, because now some people are too busy. However, it does mean we can see in real time which parties are for and against young people. For example, Rishi Sunak has just announced he would implement a mandatory national service for 18-year-olds, while Keir Starmer has announced he would give 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote. If this doesn't clearly show which party is for and which is against the young people, I don't know what does. So something that's been really interesting to see since the start of the general election is how the political parties have been using social media to their advantage, specifically on TikTok. A meme war has been declared from all political sides, and to be honest, it is pretty entertaining.
I'm looking for a new Prime Minister. Big plans, good vibes, change lives.
So before the general election, Reform UK had the biggest following out of all the other political parties. However, Reform and Labour were the only parties who did have a TikTok. Something I do find quite interesting is the Tories created their TikTok right after National Service was announced, and a lot of their content has been focusing around National Service, trying to convince young people that it is a good idea for us.
I'm not sending everyone off to join the army.
While there are some posts on each account relating to their policies, the majority of them are making fun of each other, which is entertaining, but it's not very educational, and something that worries me is they're going to sort of make a mockery of themselves. However, it is starting conversations with young people about the parties and who they might vote for. The comment sections are filled with people talking about who they want to win, who they don't want to win, which is always going to be a good thing. To find out more, I'm going to speak to someone who knows a lot about politics on social media. He goes by the Champagne Socialist, and I'm really interested to see what he thinks about this. I guess straight up, do you feel like politicians at the moment are representing young people?
No, not at all. I mean, this election campaign at the moment is very much sort of catered towards the older generations. We're seeing the Conservatives very much appeal to their core voter base, who are obviously older generations, pensioners. We saw that with the announcement of policies such as like the triple lock plus on pensions. Because if there's one group of people who haven't suffered over the last 14 years, it's definitely pensioners. Also, the national service policy as well. That very much appeals to older generations as well. You know, we have a generation of boomers who were born in the 60s who seem to have somehow kidded themselves into thinking that they were on the beaches of Dunkirk. I mean, then with Labour, I mean, what are they offering young people? At this point, all I see is memes. Because I did an interview with The Spectator yesterday about this, and they asked me what I thought about the memes, and I said, you know, memes are all well and good, but I want to see policy. I want to know, how are you going to get me, a 23-year-old graduate, on the housing ladder?
Do you feel like it could be a good way, though, to get more young people engaging in like political parties, or do you think it can go the other way and just make them be seen as a joke?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if their whole thing is like getting people in with comedy and then sort of producing like serious political content, that might be a good strategy. But, you know, we're about a week into this election.
Yeah.
You need to start announcing some policy, and these shorthand sort of videos that are being produced on TikTok by Labour, the Lib Dems, and the Conservatives as well. Yeah, they're getting shared and cut through, but when you look at the comments, a lot of time it's just taking the piss, particularly with the ones that the Conservatives are producing. With the Labour Party, people are finding them funny, and some of them are quite amusing. But I again, as somebody who, for this election, it's very important to myself and to millions of other people. Again, I don't want to see memes. I don't want to see jokes, because, you know, there's nothing to joke about at this point. When you've got 14.3 million children in poverty, a joke's not going to solve that. Policies like national service, for example, you know, it's not going to happen. Let's make that very clear. It's never going to happen. But you know, talk about what you're actually going to provide for young people, instead of, you know, an AR-15 or something like that. You know, I want to see like serious policy. You know, no one's going to be in the voting booth going like, oh, how am I going to vote? Oh yeah, the Labour Party posted a funny meme, I'll vote for them. Because, you know, the last time we voted for comedians, we got Boris Johnson, and look how that went.
I mean, what I found quite interesting is the Conservatives started their TikTok account just after national service was announced.
What people have to understand is that Rishi Sunak is incredibly wealthy, and a lot of that wealth has come from his marriage to Akshata Murthy, but he's also wealthy within his own right. And because he's incredibly wealthy, he is incredibly sheltered. And when you are going on an election campaign, talking to people who are facing some real hardships, a lot of them inflicted by this government, it's not necessarily going to cut through. I mean, I'm a big fan of watching politicians do manual labor because I'm a hater and it's what I do for work. So, and I like seeing them mess it up. But it doesn't help. As for the whole thing, like TikTok not being political, I mean, like, that's just bullshit. Like, young people are interested in politics.
Should we be encouraging more young people to watch the news? Because I think a lot of people also don't know who to trust anymore. And people tend to trust normal civilians more than like a corporation like the BBC. So I just wonder which way it's going to go.
Well, it's interesting because I think we've seen it over the years. You know, when print media was all the rage, they felt really intimidated by the introduction of TV news, because they thought, well, we're going to go out of business, because why would people buy our paper to read it when they can, you know, just watch the news and see it right in front of them? Same with the introduction of like 24-hour news, for example, as well. And then obviously when social media came along, you had a lot of, it actually benefited a lot of journalists, because usually, let's say you had a big story, you would have to time it for release for, say, the 12, 6, 10 o'clock news. But then you're also competing with loads of other stories as well that people also think are important. When social media came about properly, when it started getting used for news and politics around 2010, you know, you realize that, well, hang on, I can just post this story at 2:30 in the afternoon and the snowball effect will take hold, and if people are interested, it will gain momentum. A lot of the time I'm just using the news sources that are you know, sort of Sky, BBC, that sort of thing, and I'm just creating content from that. And look, I'm not going to say that I'm an unbiased source of information. I'm incredibly biased. I'm 100% biased. You can hear my biases come through in all my videos, and I've never claimed to be neutral. I tried to be neutral at the start, but then I thought, actually, you know what, like, when you've got a government that's trying to starve kids, why would I want to give them the benefit of the doubt?
I went to have a chat with Yuan Yang, my local MP candidate for Labour. So why should young people vote for Labour?
Well, I think at this general election the stakes are really, really high, and the contrast between Labour and the Conservatives is really clear for young people. The Tories are planning to cut university places, they're planning to send 18-year-olds to do national service. They don't have any answer to the housing crisis or to the climate crisis, and on all these fronts Labour has a much better promise for younger generations. I joined the Labour Party and I started getting involved in campaigning because I was so upset by what was happening in the cuts to higher education and the cuts to our public services in the early 2010s, which is when I first started being able to vote. And now you guys have a very different situation because you can at least vote for the first time in what might be a make or break election that could bring in a Labour majority government, and that's a really amazing thing to be part of.
So in your campaign at the moment, are you doing anything in particular to kind of target young people? Are they a focus in the campaign for you?
For us, the biggest group of young people in the constituency of Early and Woodley is, of course, the University of Reading. The White Knights main campus is within the constituency. So over the last year, we've done lots of voter registration drives, speaking on campus, trying to get people engaged, and also trying to spread our message on social media. I think, obviously, social media is such a more important realm these days than ever before.
So talking about social media, I don't know whether you've sort of seen what people are calling like a meme war on TikTok and Instagram at the moment with Labour. Do you think this is a good tactic from them to get young people interested in politics?
So yeah, I follow the Labour TikTok account and I think they're doing a great job. I mean, of course, there's been so much kind of mishaps and trip-ups that have happened in the Conservative campaign that it's just so easy to memify these things. I think it's important to translate politics into whatever language speaks to people, whether that's literally into a foreign language, because of course many of our residents in Early and Woodley constituency speak many different languages, or if that's the language of social media and memes and images. I think we have to make politics speak to people.
Yeah. So do you feel like it could go too far and like people will kind of start to lose sight of the politics behind it? And do you think that the audiences they're reaching are actually going to go out to vote, or do you feel like it's more of a gimmick at the moment?
I think it's important to consider how people use social media. People are scrolling through things, giving each post maybe a few seconds of their attention. I think in that context, given that's how people read, then it's really important to have eye-grabbing, attention-catching graphics or memes that stop you and just make you think, oh, what's this about? I might read the caption or I might read a bit more. So for me, the meme is the thing that hooks you. It's not the politics, it's not the policy, it's not the whole thing, but it's the thing that makes you stop and think, maybe I should give this a bit of my time. And then in the caption or in the link below, of course, there'll be more room to explain what's going on behind the policies, and you should always kind of build out from there. So I very much see it as kind of like a triangle of how you catch somebody's attention and then how you get them to read a bit more and more, and how you link that into a broader body of policy and discussion about politics.
Throughout this project, I've ended up getting involved in a lot more campaigning activities. Before, I used to be one of those people who would complain about things, maybe online to people, but I never actually did anything. Throughout both the research, planning and recording process of filming this, I have really taken time to think about myself and how much campaigning I'm doing. It's not enough, especially now that there is a general election announced. There's a very, very clear answer for who I want to win, Labour, and who I don't want to win, the Conservative Party. I don't see my life getting better under the Tories. For example, mandatory national service. Is that something I want to do? Absolutely not. I can't even vote on that. That makes me annoyed in itself. Whereas I've got the Labour Party who are saying they would give a 16 and 17-year-old the right to vote, which I do agree with. If I'm going to be paying tax, if I can get a job, if I can get a car, I should be able to vote for the people who affect those decisions. It's all out of my control. No one who the mandatory national service will affect can vote. 18-year-olds currently, by the time it gets put in place, if it did, hypothetically, they would have missed the boat for that. But it's people like me who are 17 and 16-year-olds and all those younger than us who can't make that decision for ourselves. I've been getting a lot more involved with local Labour canvassing, especially for Yuan Yang. She's my local MP candidate, and talking to her, I really get a sense that she understands what young people need. I'm really realising that as young people, it's all good talking about it. We need to be actively doing stuff. If we don't get out there and protest, sign petitions, raise our voices about it, nothing is going to change for us, and we need to change.
It keeps me awake, the look on your face, the moment you heard the news. You're screaming inside and frozen in time, you did all that you could do. The game was rigged, the ref got tricked, the wrong ones think they're right. You were outnumbered this time. But only the young, only the young, only the young, only the young can run.